Well, howdy and how are you, everybody? I am going to do a three-part series. Now, for those of you who have just subscribed to the channel and you're not quite yet familiar with the way I do things around here, there's always some sort of weird or different way that I might be addressing certain situations, diseases, weeds, soils, all of that kind of stuff. But in my last video, and you can click the little eye icon up here, this is just to, it was just basically updates. I mentioned how I wanted to be talking about fertility and why we do that. And I'm skipping that for now, and there's a very good reason that I'm skipping that for now. We're gonna take a look at something. But I wanted to run through and do 3 videos back to back on cultural practices, just the top 3, and it's basically this: watering, mowing, feeding, those 3 things. So I'm starting with mowing. Here's why. So in that last video, that again, if you clicked up there and you took that, you saw what the grass looked like after me being gone for a little bit. I had fed at 1801 not long before that, and the grass grew a lot, and I had left the center section of the lawn short, and I'd let the rest of it grow, this area behind me right here, and it got up over 4 inches. And I came through and I hacked it all off back down to a ½ an inch. So that was a few days ago. I haven't run the mower across it since, so it's growing. And I'm going to point out a few things, and we're going to talk about the cultural practice of mowing and how to best utilize that as a tool to not only help you have just a good look on your lawn, but how it helps to thicken the lawn, how it helps to lower the stress of the lawn, and how it helps to get rid of weeds. So let's take a look. Okay, so I'm obviously behind the camera right now, but I'm showing something that is very easy for me to see off camera, and I want to see if I'm going to outline it with my finger so that you guys can see it too. Now, if you look right down this edge, see this strip right here, right in front of me here, and then again here, down to the end. See the difference in the color between here and just outside that line right here and over here on the other side. So that area I let grow long. That was growing long. This edge was growing long. This was kept super short. I was keeping this as my cornhole green, and it has come up a little bit. I mean, it's growing pretty quick right now, but you can see that I cut out the color. I put the grass under stress by doing what I did, by going from a 4-inch height roughly down to a ½ inch. And it definitely put the grass into sort of a stress recovery mode. And if we get sort of right over here, try to tell if we can see right on top of it, there is, it's hard to see maybe on camera, there's a little more of a sort of yellowish here, and it's darker here. See that? Now, here's why. This area right behind me is ridiculously thick. It is super dense. It has been kept short now for 6 weeks or so. I'd have to go back and look at the video and see how long I've actually been doing this, but this has been consistently cut down short. And the rest of it was, but then I let it get up a little taller. I wanted to have a dividing line because I had this little cornhole green set up. So I wanted to see a differentiation in the turf. Everything was fed exactly the same. Everything was watered the same. There was no difference. So this area, because it was consistent, I would come out here sometimes every day and cut like at least a ¼ inch off every single day to keep it at a ½ inch. The rest would grow for a little while longer before it would get a mow. So what happened is I cut off like 90% of that grass, and it kicked it into a stress mode. Now, it's not going to last long because the grass has been cut short before, but it is visible and it is something you can see, and I think it's important to point out. And I am going to give you a perfect example as to why this happens, okay? Now, if you watched that video, the one where I did the updates, you saw this. It's actually recovering really, really quickly. Remember that? That's the square from where that thing sat out. So grass, super thick, grass, still super thick, but suffered because it was covered up, it was shaded, it didn't get any sun for a few days, and it was packed under a super dense canopy, AKA a cornhole board. So it suffered underneath that thing, and it's gonna take a couple days to come out of it. Now, it's already been, it actually hasn't been too long. It's only been 3 days since that was removed and this has been exposed. And the temps were hot for a couple of those, but today it's actually pretty cool. It's 70 degrees. There was a cold front that came through. No real moisture came of it, but the grass is recovering really, really quickly. But this is what I want to point out. When you let your grass grow taller and you decide to cut off a lot more, and I'm talking a lot more, getting down into 50% or better, ignoring that 1/3 rule, you start cutting down into this sub canopy layer, and that can expose the grass isn't going to be as dark because it's not photosynthesizing the same. It's covered, so it's not getting the same light units, so it's totally different. So when you cut it, you end up getting into a plant that has been pushing and creating chlorophyll up on the higher part of the leaf blade. Not only that, when grass like bluegrass gets taller, it branches. It has a certain branching height, and I don't have any that's long enough to show that, but it kind of comes up and it sends out and branches like this. And so when you come in and cut short, you cut down into this sort of stalking layer, this cast as it were, and you cut out a huge amount of thickness. So by keeping it short and training it like this, the grass is growing a lot more laterally. It's growing tighter together rather than just upright and branching. It's sending all of its blades out to the sides. So what does that do for me? Let's take a look down here. So if you take a look at the turf and the thickness of the turf, there's not really much that's going to be able to get through that. There's not really going to be a chance really for weeds to get through, because look at how it's down in here going laterally as well as vertically to cover up every single space that is possible. So the grass is covering itself, it's covering the soil, it's really doing a good job of blocking everything else out. And that's because I trained it to go really short. The same thing happens when the grass is long. When your grass is longer, you're still going to get the ability to shade the soil, and you create a canopy that makes it difficult for weeds to grow. So this is a different way of getting there to get the grass to grow laterally. I haven't put any PGRs on here. I'm not doing anything to slow down the growth. I just feed it considerably less in. So now let's talk about what mowing does just for the weed count by itself. So when I take my mower and I run it across like that and cut everything down to this height, anything that could be potentially growing in there, whether it is a weedy grass or it's a dandelion or anything else, I am chopping way, way down. And that alone, hello friend, how are you? You good? You want to say hi? Are you seeing any weeds in the lawn? Are there any weeds in the lawn? Where's the weeds? Where are the weeds? No weeds. You can't find any either. So you're going to cut the, this is what my grass is really for. You're going to cut the leaves off. You're going to prevent that plant from being able to photosynthesize. And for the most case, you're going to allow the sun to cook out that weed that you just exposed by mowing down and mowing regularly. Regularly is the key here. So typically, you know, I could let this grass grow and cut it once a week. I could. With a rotary mower, I definitely could. If I kept it at a taller height, that would be a way to go. But since I'm keeping it low and I'm encouraging it to branch, this requires a cut every other day. It has only been since Sunday, and there is 1 inch of growth. You can see that right there. Grass is up 1 inch since Sunday. So I am gonna have to come through and cut it, and that's what's gonna happen today. So you need to make sure that mowing is religiously done. It's vital for your turf health, vital for thickening up. And really, I use these manual reel mowers. I didn't always do that. I used to use my Honda, and when I was a kid, it was a Snapper. And this, this is more new to me. I mean, here in keeping it short, the short grass is fairly new, but it doesn't really matter if it was long or short. If you are cutting your grass religiously, and it could be twice a week, which if you can do that, you need to. If you could do every other day, that's even better. Not everybody has that kind of time, I understand. But cutting those small little bits off allows the turf to really have a nice even color all the time. It doesn't come under stress like it would when you're chopping off a big significant amount of body of plant. And it also keeps you ahead of what potential weed pressure you could have. Would you agree, Harky? I think he agrees. No, he doesn't agree. Damn it. Okay, so I went ahead and mowed everything down here, and you can see how it really evened out the color. The only difference that you're seeing is the light from the shadows and what sunlight is coming across it right now. Now, I found a long piece of bluegrass that was up under an area that I hadn't edged yet, and I wanted you to take a look at that branching and what happens to the grass when you let it grow long. It's automatically trying to thicken the canopy on its own, and what I'm doing by cutting often is keeping it at a single blade. It isn't getting the opportunity to branch at that height. So the grass blades stay lower, and then if they do branch, they branch laterally and go out to the sides. So that's what's creating the thickness and even color here. So I did ignore, like I said, that 1/3 cutting rule. You only take about 1/3 out of your turf every time, and that keeps the stress down. I went down about 9/10, 90%. And that's what caused the stress. But now I'm mowing it back down to even out the color. It's okay. It's not really a problem. It just gives it a little bit of unsightliness for a couple of days. And everything is going to continue as normal. So these are the things that I want you to take away from this. Mow often. Don't take a lot of the blade off every time. If you're going to take a grass down short, you need to give it time to get down short. Don't just do it one day unless you really want it to look pretty nasty for a while. You can take it down slow and get it to where you need it to be. I always recycle my clippings. Now, the only times I would ever change that is if I had 6 or 8 inch grass and I needed to bag it off because it was going to cake over the top. But even what I cut the other day, that grass is gone. It's been used up. The biology has taken it. It's now food for the rest of the turf. So I always like to recycle everything back in. So here's what you're getting. Mow frequently. Just make sure you do it. Make sure your blades are sharp. You want to cut, not tear. Tears will give your grass an unsightly sort of brown haze over the top of it. So make sure you're cutting clean, nice clean tips. Make sure those blades are sharp. And just a little bit every time, just to nick it off. So if you're able to do that every other day, every 3rd day type mowing, you're going to see a great benefit in the thickness, in the color, and the weed count of your lawn. So keep those things in mind. Those are going to be sort of your top reasons to make mowing a more religious activity, something that is consistent, something that you don't miss. So that's going to be part 1 of this cultural practices. We're just talking about mowing today. It was a perfect opportunity to show, because there was some color that was cut out of it, and then show some stress, and then show what happens when I cut it all back down and take it all back down to that 1/2 inch height where I have it. It's totally fine, looks great, still no weeds, thick grass, everybody's happy, and that's it. So come on back. We're going to be talking about fertilizer in the next one, and hopefully if the weather holds out for me, I'll be able to do that within the next day or two. And we'll just keep going through this as the cultural practices series, and really understanding why we do these things. So that's it. talk to you guys real soon. See ya.